Good evening, everyone, sorors and guests. We welcome you all this evening to our Financially Lit workshop. This workshop is aimed at really giving you some knowledge and skills in regards to financial matters that cover an array of different topics from budgeting, credit 101, investing, and a number of other tips that you can use to enhance your financial success. So my name is Jakari Henderson, and I serve as the president of the Gamma Kappa Omega chapter located here in Carbondale, Illinois. Again, we welcome you all this evening. We hope you take notes. We hope you've come ready to learn, as we will share a lot of helpful and informative tips. So we're going to jump right into it. You can see here our discussion outline. So we will have speaker introductions. We will have an icebreaker. We will talk about credit matters, build your budget, and protecting your identity. Okay. So again, my name is Jakari Henderson. I'm to the far left. I serve as the president of the Gamma Kappa Omega chapter. I have here with me two of my lovely sorors who also serve as financial officers for the chapter. We have Mrs. Monica Disro, who serves as our treasurer, and she also serves as our Target 3 chairman. She has a lot of knowledge and experience specifically. She has a lot of knowledge and experience specifically in regards to the finance background. She works in, as a CPA, taxes, a number of different things. You name it, she does it. We also have my soror Brianna Clayman, who serves as the Target 3 chairman, as well as our financial secretary. She has worked in the banking business for quite some time, as well as working within the mortgage department, specifically at the bank. So sorors, go ahead and wave, let the folks know who you are. Again, we're so happy that you all joined us, and we're gonna jump right into our icebreaker. So I'm gonna turn it over to soror Brianna for this icebreaker.
Thank you, Madam President. And hello, everyone. Good evening. Happy Financial Literacy Month. We're just capping at the end of this and just want to be able to share just the importance of financial literacy and the different topics that we'll discuss tonight. So yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into the icebreaker. We do have a couple of questions that we'll ask in regards to something that's finances, just to kind of keep it a little bit of fun. Madam Jakari, do you have the poll questions ready?
Let me see if I have them launched. I do not have those pulled up. So, Brianna, do you want to go ahead and just ask them, and we'll share amongst the group?
No problem. We can do that. Okay, so the first question, so what I'll do is just ask the question, and if you know the answer, just raise your virtual hand, and then I'll just call and you can do it that way. Simple and easy, so no problem. So the first question is, how many Black CEOs have there been in history? 1 or A, 2, B, 19, C, 35. Does anyone know how many Black CEOs there have been in history? If not, you can still guess and see if you can guess the right answer. Kenya?
Well, I'm going to say C, 35.
That is not correct. How about you, Kyla?
19.
That is correct. So there were 19 Black CEOs in history. Does anyone know, or Kyla, do you know how many there are currently? Kyla, you're muted. Do you know the answer? Okay, well, there's 19 in history. However, there are only 4 currently. So out of the, I believe it's like 1800s or a couple of thousand, only 19 were Black and only 4 are currently CEOs. So the next question is, how many Black billionaires are there in the US? A, 5, B, 9, C, 15. How many Black billionaires are there in the US? Go ahead and raise your virtual hand if you want to take a jab at this one. Jasmine?
I guess 5.
What was that?
I'm gonna guess 5.
That's not correct. Latanya,
9.
9. That is correct. So there are 9. There are currently 15 in the world, and only 2 females. Do you know who the 2 females are? Jasmine?
I'm gonna guess Rihanna and Oprah.
Yep, that is correct. Rihanna and Oprah are the 2 Black women billionaires in the US. Very good. And our last question is, what is the median income for Black households? Again, what is the median income for Black households? We have A, 22,000, B, 38,000, and C, 46. Lateria?
A.
No, it is not 22,000. Alicia?
Alicia, I'll go with B, 38.
Alicia, it is not B. Well, Kenya? I guess
I was definitely hopeful that it was at least C based on the choices available.
So yeah, so I did round it a little bit. It's actually, as of 2020, it was 45,870. That was the median income for Black households. I believe for white households, I believe 8,066 or something around that range, if I'm not mistaken, compared to these people. So thank you all for participating, and let's go forward with our workshop for tonight.
Thank you, Rihanna, for that fun game. I'm sure a lot of people learned a lot of information. All right, so I will begin with the credit section. I do ask that all of our guests keep their computers or their phones muted during the discussion. I will start with the credit matter. So obviously this is so important. You may have heard several times that credit is just as, if not even more important than the money that you have. So we want to do what we can to make sure that we are constantly taking care of our credit. There are a number of different ways that you can do this. So what is a credit score? So there is a ranking that starts at the bottom at 300 and goes all the way to the top, which is 850. This is what creditors will look at to determine how reliable you are in regards to offering you a loan that you may want to take out for a house, a car. So it is very important that you take care of this credit score. A lot of people will tell you to guard it with your life, because once it starts to go down, it's really, really hard to get it back up or to improve it. So what are some of the credit score factors? So credit bureaus look at a number of different items when they are considering scores. So you can see here at the end on the 300, you see that's considered very bad up until about that 560 range, okay? Bad is considered between the 560 to almost the 650. And it really depends on who you talk to when you ask this question, but in most cases, when you're looking to secure a loan, these are some of the scores that you want to be thinking of. You want to at least be in the 650 plus in regards to getting, being eligible for different loans. You can see the 650 to about the 700 is fair. 700 to about the 750 range is good. And then from the 750 range to 850 is considered excellent credit, okay? So creditors look at 35% of your score is scored specifically by your payment history. So this is how well are you making those payments on your loans that you may have, whether this is a credit card, whether this is a mortgage, whether this is student loans. If you specifically start to default on loans, or maybe not make good credit payments, if you have things that go into collections, this will affect your payment history significantly. And you can see that that is the largest item that is a credit score factor. So you want to make sure at all times that you're paying your bills on time, you are not defaulting on anything, and that if you have, before something goes into collections, you contact that agency and ask them if you can either work something out. You don't want to, like I said, allow those collections to go to be sent specifically to those credit bureaus, because they will heavily and negatively impact your score. How much do you owe? That is made up of 30%. So again, they want to make sure, that you're not taking out, you're considered a negligent consumer. So you're taking out a lot of debt and you're not paying, not making good payments on it. So what I always recommend individuals to do, and you'll hear a lot of creditors say this, is you don't want to have more than 30% of your credit card or credit used. That will hit and ding your score significantly. And so you want to make sure that you're keeping low balances. Again, you need the credit scores and loans and whatnot to kind of help build your credit, but you also want to be very, very responsible, because if you start to go into large amounts of debt, you're unable to make those payments, you lose a job, your credit score will be significantly impacted. They also look at a length of credit history. So we had our Financially Lit book club within the last 2 weeks. We had a first discussion and a second discussion. And Tiffany kind of talked about this. So it's fine if you are, if you have a child maybe that's 18 years old, and maybe you want to add them to a credit card so that they can start to kind of accumulate a credit score. That's fine. But you don't want to do it when your kid's 10 years old and it looks like they have a credit line for 20 years and it's older than the child. Okay. So you really want to consider how long have you had a good standing of your credit history. Keep in mind that, collections and things do fall off your credit score within a matter of 7 years. But you want to minimize those if possible, because again, they will ding you and will show on your credit score as well as your report for 7 years. They also take a look at new credit. So that's 10% of your credit score. So if you're constantly applying for new, whether it's consumer stores, credit cards, or if you're constantly going to get loans for, automobiles, or just, Target, JCPenney, they are taking this into consideration. Okay. You want to be very mindful and very calculated on the items that you apply for specifically for credit. I always say, if you can live without it, you don't need it. If you can pay for it in cash for something that's very small, minute, pay for it in cash. The types of credit used. So they look at a mixture. They want to see that you have a good, healthy mix of different credits, and maybe credit cards that you're using. So maybe you have a home loan, maybe you have an automobile loan, maybe you have one, a retail card. They're looking at that mix to determine specifically what it is that you never want to spend your money with, and then are you responsible? So again, you can see the breakdown there, 35% that payment history at the top, the amounts owed 30%, the length of your credit history 15%, the amount of new credit that you have applied for is 10%, and then the type of credit that you use is 10% as well. Okay, so the three major credit bureaus. So you can see the TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. A lot of times folks will report, oh my, a lot of times you'll hear specifically from a lot of people that their credit score is different with a number of different bureaus. And that is because different bureaus report certain items when they are reporting on your credit score. So you have for TransUnion, they're reporting and looking at your general information, your credit summary, your public records. They're looking at collections. They're looking at your account information, credit inquiries, and then consumer statements. Sometimes this is optional on whether or not they report that. For Equifax, they're looking at your personal identification. They're looking at your public records. They're looking at collections, your credit accounts, additional information, and credit inquiries as well. And then for Experian, they're looking at your personal information, your credit history, credit inquiries, bankruptcies, and court judgments, and then identification information. So again, it's important to know specifically all things that are affecting your credit score and how they will be reported within those different agencies, especially when you look to go and buy a home. A lot of times, like, some things are not reflected specifically in that report, but you want to know before you even start that process so that you can kind of even work on those items to resolve collections, to maybe have a better understanding of how much of a down payment that you may have that's based upon your credit score. So it is important to keep in mind the different items that are reported by the different credit bureaus. Okay, so why specifically might your credit score be low? Okay, so maybe you have short or no credit history. A lot of times you'll hear folks say that having no credit at all is worse than having bad credit. Okay, so it's important that you establish some sort of credit and work to build and maintain that credit, a healthy credit score. You have too many credit accounts. Again, they're looking at a mixture of all of that information to determine whether or not how your credit score will be impacted. If I always recommend no more than 3 credit cards, just because that's a safe place specifically for a lot of people. And it shows, one, you can be responsible in managing that debt, but also that you're not, a risky borrower in most eyes of credit bureaus. So it's important not to have too many accounts. Late or missed payments. I always stress this with clients. You never want to be in a situation where you are missing payments or you are always late. One, they're going to charge you more money because you're going to get hit with late fees. And then also it's going to ding your credit. Most credit bureaus report 30 days on when an account has gone either late or negative. And so you want to make sure that you are making the appropriate payments and timelines. Monica will talk a little bit more about budgeting. So it's important to know specifically what you can build your budget for that encompasses debt as well as saving initiatives. Those recent credit inquiries, again, if you keep getting your credit keeps getting hit and dinged by you trying to get new credit cards or new loans, your score is going to be negatively impacted by that. So it's important to choose very wisely in regards to, what you're applying for. A lot of times too, when folks are like buying a car, they'll tell you like some will be soft or hard inquiries. You'll hear a lot of people say that as well. You want to be mindful of those very hard inquiries because those will hit your credit score very hard. Soft, not so much. They will make a dent, but they're not going to be as bad as those hard inquiries. High balances, again, you want to stay away from that. You don't want to utilize more than 30% of that card balance because again, it will ding your credit score. If you have multiple delinquent accounts, again, they want to make sure that the money that they're giving you, you can pay back and you can do so in a timely manner and be responsible. So you do not want to have any delinquent accounts, okay? All right, so we talked about what affects it. So how do you rise your credit score? Pay your bills on time. This is so important. That's why budgeting is so essential. If you cannot afford something, if you have, I like to say, if you have, let's say a Honda is a good car. You got, Honda salary money. You don't need to go out and get a Benz or a Range Rover if you have a Honda salary. There is no point specifically in living above your means. I specifically feel like a lot of times in the Black community, this is something that we do very bad. We'll look rich and be broke. And so it's important that you manage your money well as be fiscally responsible and make those hard decisions. A lot of times it comes with making those hard decisions in your young ages so that when you get older, you can live freely. You can do the things that you want to do by being responsible. So again, pay your bills on time. You want to avoid collections. Again, collections hit your account and they hit your credit score very, very hard. You want to keep those balances low. I don't recommend more than 30%. Again, that makes the difference. If you are constantly a user that's going over that 30% limit, they're going to ding your credit score because it's going to look like you're maintaining or utilizing a high percentage of your balance. Opening those credit accounts that are necessary. You want to make sure that you are taking advantage of using the credit that's going to help you the most and that you'll benefit from, and that also you utilize often. If it's something that you're never going to use, that may not be the credit card that you want to apply for. You want to always negotiate payment plans. In the event that maybe you fall on hard times, you want to communicate that with the agency. They may be willing to work with you versus just saying, I'm not going to pay anything. I'm not going to communicate, because that will only hurt you. Do not consolidate if you do not have to. That is important, okay? These are things that will help you raise that credit score. Okay, so different types of cards that are available for individuals. So you have secure credit. So this is any loan that's backed by collateral. So again, this is an example of like a mortgage or an auto loan. So in the event maybe that the consumer defaults on that actual loan, the lender can actually seize the property that was pledged as collateral. So again, they can come take your house. They can, repo your car if you don't pay your payments, etc. So those are things to be very mindful of with secure credit. So unsecured credit. So that is any loan that is not backed by collateral. So this means that the risk is much higher for the lender. If that consumer fails to repay, the lender must win a court judgment in order to recover any unpaid debt. So this is something that may be more like a credit card as an unsecured credit, because again, you know, have a credit card that can come and, you know, cut your card off or whatever, but they can't actually take anything. Installment credit. So this is any loan that is repaid in equal installments. So this is something that a lot of individuals, some may be automobile loans, some may be student loan debt, some may be personal loans. These are loans that are granted by a consumer that have to be paid in equal installments over a specific period of time. So again, keyword, equal payment of equal installment payments over time, okay? Non-installment credit. So this is any loan that is repaid in one lump sum amount. So again, this is a bill maybe that you're paying monthly. So a utility bill or medical service. So it may say, you know, bill due upon, payment is due upon receipt. So that's non-installment credit. So again, that's something that maybe you're paying just on a monthly basis that again is not backed by really any collateral. All right, so different types of credit cards. This is important to know how to utilize. A lot of folks will maximize, you know, utilizing credit cards to their advantage to take advantage of points, you know, get cash rewards, cash back. So these are things that you want to be mindful of when you are thinking about looking into these particular areas. So bank cards, these are issued by banks. So these can be linked to your debit card, your savings account, loans, or different credit unions. Some may come with the annual fee, many don't, especially if they come with the bank. There are sometimes interest rates that may vary depending on the consumer's credit rating, and company policy. Travel and entertainment cards. So a lot of people will think that these are just specifically for travel or entertainment, and that's not the case. They are not limited to travel or entertainment, and any consumer can use this for any item or service obtained with this card, okay? They may be charged an annual fee and be required to pay the full balance each month. Lenders who issue these cards are less tolerant of late payments and are quick to revoke privileges. So again, you want to make sure that you're being responsible when utilizing a travel or entertainment card. Merchant cards. So these are offered by most major department stores. So again, we talked about that: Target, Walmart, JCPenney's, etc. These are cards that are offered by those major departments. Oil companies and airlines also issue merchant cards. They can change, those annual fees can change from year to year. They do provide oftentimes discounts, frequent flyer miles, and other features so that you can utilize to maximize off of those cards. Secure credit cards. So these are funds that are drawn specifically from an account that the consumer has. A lot of times, some people who maybe have bad credit scores are not, you know, able to actually secure any, you know, actual credit card to build their credit. They may utilize their own money to help build their credit. So they're using their money to actually fund to help build their credit over time. This is a great option for folks who maybe have no credit established so that they can work again to build that credit. It's your money that you're paying on. And so you want to, again, be responsible and make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, but it is a way for folks who have no credit to build that credit. So what are some of the different types of credit card fees? Credit cards are a good thing, but they can also sometimes be very tricky. So it's very, very important that you utilize those cards wisely. So you have your late payment credit card fee. So this is, again, if you're not paying your bill on time, credit card companies will hit you with a late payment fee. Again, that you have to read the fine print. You know, I know a lot of credit card companies, they'll be very long and very small words, but you want to make sure that you really fully understand specifically the terms and conditions of that credit card that you're using, because again, sometimes those late payments can rack up, especially if you're constantly having to pay late payment fees all the time. If you spend over the limit, you will be charged the fee. So it's very important, like I said, to make sure that, you know, you're staying within under that 30% so that you're not putting yourself at risk to over the limit fees or excessive balances. Some cards have annual fees that you may be subjected to, that you may have to pay every year in regards to holding one of those credit cards. Some have transaction fees. So again, your credit card, you want to use it to build your credit, but some may also hit you with a transaction fee for just using the card. So that's why it's sometimes important to maybe save for things that you can actually buy so that you don't have to utilize that credit card to buy or pay for some of these things. Like I said, they're good to use when you use them responsibly, but when you do not, it can cause a lot of havoc and cause a lot of a burden of debt. Cash advances, that's another fee that you could be hit with. Some credit bureaus will even hit you with an early payoff fee. So kind of penalize you specifically for doing the right thing and paying off your credit card balance. So it's important to really understand the terms and conditions of your credit cards. All right. What are some proper credit card usage? So again, I stated this before. You want to make sure that you're limiting the number of cards that you maintain to a maximum of 3. Again, this gives you a good mix of the credit cards that you're actually utilizing, but also not putting you in a position where you have 10 to 15 credit cards that you're constantly trying to monitor, to use, because you're not really able to take full advantage if you have a number of them. It's best to utilize the ones that are best fit for whatever you plan to use them for. Avoid cards with early interest posting dates. That is another thing. I know my soror Brianna talked about that with Tiffany. She talked about, doing that little trick specifically where you make a payment before the actual statement. That way you can kind of, get points specifically, or, save some money as well. You want to limit to 30%. Again, you will be dinged every time that you start to go over this because you're you're carrying a high balance. They don't want to look at that because they feel like then you are maybe a risky lender who may not be able to manage responsibly that actual balance. You also want to avoid credit cards with high interest fees. Again, you don't want to be paying more for these cards than what you're actually utilizing. That defeats the whole purpose. You want to avoid cards with complicated billing statements because this is also a thing. You will get confused and thinking that you understand and maybe you really don't. And then you really haven't fully understood the terms and conditions. And now you're sitting here paying extra money and then you're confused why you're never getting ahead or why you're not managing to pay down that debt effectively. You want to pay more than the monthly minimum balance. This is so important. I don't care if it's $5. I don't care if it's $10. You want to make sure you're paying more than just the minimum monthly balance because it does make a difference. Again, when that interest starts to tack on there, if you're only paying the minimum, it's going to take you so much longer to pay off that debt. So it's important that you take advantage of that. Okay. So when you're canceling a credit card, maybe let's say you're getting ready to pay off the balance, you feel like, maybe you don't want to manage this credit card debt anymore, it's too risky for you, cancel that card. You always want to make sure, number one, you pay off the balance before you cancel that card. I don't care what terms, conditions, issues you've had, you always want to settle that balance before you cancel or close a card. It's so important. You also want to be very mindful specifically of notifying the issuer by phone, following up. So important to follow up in writing as well as calling. You then want to check your credit report to ensure specifically that the card has been canceled, and you want to make sure that it indicates that it was canceled or closed at the consumer's request. It's so important that you have them to note that, okay? One of the things that a lot of people need to consider when they're trying to get credit fast, so maybe you're trying to buy a house really quickly, 4 things that they take into consideration to qualify you for credit early. And that's, for short, it's called ASAP. So it's your ability. So do you have the income to pay any past loans? Do you have the money available? Okay. Stability. How long have you had your current job? How long have you lived in your residence? Again, this is helping them to establish whether or not you're stable, you have the ability to actually be able to pay for whatever loan that maybe you're taking on. They also factor in your creditworthiness. Assets. What do you own? Do you own a car? Do you own property? Do you own land? If you don't, that may be something that they may consider as well. Your performance. How have you handled your credit in the past? So that's where that 100% of that breakdown of that credit score makes a difference. That payment history, the mix of credit, how much do you owe? All of those things are so important when you're trying to qualify for credit very quickly. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're following those items. Are there any questions in regards to credit? I know we kind of covered a lot. There are so many different things, like I said, you know, that you want to be mindful of. The best thing I can say is definitely make sure, you know, you are being responsible with your finances. Now, not spending more than what you know you don't need or what you can't, you know, afford, because again, that will just continue to put you in debt. And if you're trying to get ahead or you're trying to be more fiscally responsible, it will become very hard and almost ultimately impossible to do, especially if you continue to get into more debt. Okay. Are there questions? I looked at the chat box and okay, so I see somebody made a comment. They says, a parent, my wife and I have made our adult children authorized users on some of our cards to help empower them. And that is so important. I think that it really starts at home. It takes one person to kind of change the narrative in your family. So if you have the opportunity to do that for someone, definitely do it, because again, it makes a difference. They may graduate. I know some people who graduated with 800 credit scores just because a grandparent or aunt or uncle put them as an authorized user on their card. Now they can go get a car. They don't have to put as much money down for a down payment, because again, that credit speaks to their ability to be able to manage and handle, you know, affording that loan and navigating that process. So it is so important. And if you can do it, definitely do it for a loved one to really kind of open up the door for them. Any other questions? Last call for questions about the credit piece. We will have one at the end as well. So don't feel like you can if you think of something. Sore Faith?
Yes, I wanted to mention that when my daughter was away in college, my sister created one of those rush card accounts for her. And it was funny because she could monitor her spending and, you know, she would put money on it for her to be able to use. So, you know, my daughter has, you know, decent amount of credit now. And even when she didn't have a full-time job, she was working on trying to get her student loan debt down. But I just thought that was, you know, very wise of my sister. She's all about fiscal responsibility. And because I was broke when my daughter went to school. So, you know, I was eating cornflakes and canned beans just to try to get her through. But, you know, I really appreciate my sister for doing that. And not everybody is able or thinks about doing that. So I thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a great point too, Sore Faith, that it is important for the opportunity, because again, that opens up doors for conversations to happen. My niece is 10 years old and my sister has her little card that she adds money on there for her, and this is what you get for this time, and then after that you spend it, you're done. And it's so important, I think, because specifically in the African American community, money sometimes can be looked at as such a negative thing. You know, it kind of, you know, determines what kind of mood you in, you know, kind of determines sometimes your attitude towards people. And it's so important not to think negatively about money, but to change your perspective, change your position, change your mindset. There are so many different resources out there that are available, that even if you're starting at 40, 50, 60, that you can kind of turn things around as long as you're disciplined. I've learned that a long time ago. It's really the mindset that you choose to really break generational curses. No, I'm a first generation college student. I didn't know really anything about money management until I was in college. You know, I was in my master's program, really learning about being fiscally responsible. And I've been able to turn it around and kind of make a difference specifically with my loved ones and communicating that. So it is important to have that person that makes a difference, you know, that gives opportunity, because sometimes folks may not get that. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to my Sora Monica, who will talk specifically about the budgeting piece. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Sora Monica.
Thank you so much, Madam Jakari, President Jakari. This is just such a great topic. Credit matters, the part that parents play in a child's journey to being fiscally responsible, their financial knowledge. It's just such an important topic. The topic that I'm going to share with you guys is budgeting and the value of a budget. How do you budget? The importance of a budget. So let me just get started. So for me, what is a budget? How do you build a budget? Why is it important? So I consider a budget like navigation for your money. So we have Siri. Siri communicates strategically where you are and where you plan on going. But the budget does that with every penny, with every liquid asset that you have. You want to plan out where you are and where you want to go. So I mentioned liquid assets. So yes, your assets are also and should also be included in your budget. Think of every part of income, everything that you have of value included in your budget. So when you budget, in essence, you're asking for yourself to have a turn-by-turn, a step-by-step for saying, this is where I'm at. This is all the income I have. This is all the costs that I have. So this is where I want to go. And just know, you have to be realistic with yourself that when you don't take the budgeting process serious, you may not know where you're at. You may not really have a way of monitoring, calculating, or even acknowledging where you're at along your journey. You may not know if you're making progress, and you may actually have way more apprehension, way more stress behind where you're at when it comes to your money matters. So budgeting is so important because without that plan, you just kind of don't know where you're at. And then personally for me, I know that it's super important. I've worked for large Fortune 500 companies, and I have to say they spend a large amount of their revenue, a large amount of their income to make certain that their CFO and that their accounting team has a budgeting process in place. So budgeting and planning is so important, even to a corporation. They themselves need to know financially where they are along their journey to producing products, to being a success. So budgeting is so important. So in this next slide, let's see if I can advance. In the next slide, we're going to go over kind of at a high level how we create that plan for our money so that each penny earned is spent with a purpose. So budgeting, how to create a budget. So tools, and more tools. So all of those tools, every tool that you can manage to grab, every tool that you can imagine, they are so important. And there's something so different about budgeting that you have to say, I may need some tools in place. But what do those tools look like? You may need to write it out. And it's perfectly fine if you actually write it out in pen and paper. It's perfectly fine if you Google an app and use an app. It's perfectly fine if you use online banking tools. It's perfectly fine if you actually have an accountability partner or person who's better at managing money than you are. Use all your resources. Just know that the journey will be as good as the amount of effort that you put into it. So we're along this journey. We know that we have income, we have costs. The goal is to manage one against the other, is to manage all of our income against all of our costs. So again, use your tools, use apps, use any and all avenues at your fingertips and even beyond your fingertips to get to the goal. I do myself personally write it down. I write down every piece of income that I have coming in. Income fluctuates, but I don't skip any piece of it. If ever I earn it, I write it down. Whenever I spend it, I write it down. The goal is to have a surplus. The goal is to have money that exceeds your costs, but that may not always be the case. But you won't know that if you don't write this out, if you don't use these tools and actually know where you're at. So budgeting is, the goal of budgeting is to get that picture laid out. So once you have your apps, once you have your tools in place, the goal is to get that picture in place. So all of your expenses, all of your costs, all of your money spent, we want to make sure that we have all of that down to the penny. So one thing that I've noticed is we have an idea of where we're spending our money, but we want to be realistic. We want to know where we're spending our money. So one of the first steps in budgeting is to look back in history. You look at your bank statements, you look at your credit card statements. Again, use all these tools, using all the tools. You need to know where you're actually spending your money. So I know I went from the money you're making to doing a lot more work when it comes to all of where you're spending your money. But that's what you really need to focus on to make sure that you have a surplus. You need to know exactly where you're spending your money. So if you're spending $1,000 per se at a conference, you won't know that if you don't actually look at those bank statements. You won't know just by thinking, oh, I just bought a shirt, I just bought this, I'm sure I could not have spent this. Look at your records, use your tools. So I always start there by looking at history. Okay, so these budget categories, when we are looking at and evaluating those costs, they can vary from being fixed costs to being variable. And then also your income, it can vary also from being flexible to being fixed. So both categories can be fixed versus flexible. And then also your budget itself will have areas that will be fixed versus flexible. You'll have certain costs such as utility bills that will vary according to the seasons. Your AC may be higher in the winter, higher in the summer, lower in the winter, and then the opposite, your utility bills for heat can be the opposite. It can be lower in the summer, but they will vary. Whereas your mortgage will be steady, it'll be fixed. It'll be the same payment month after month after month. Now, unless your taxes change, again, that will be a fixed cost. So when we are preparing our budget, both our income as well as our costs can be flexible as well as fixed. So most of the time we are preparing our budget on a month-to-month basis. So I actually write out all of the income for the month, all of the costs for the month. So what I write down for the month of June may be different from what I write down for the month of December, and that would be based on those flexible versus fixed costs. So make sure that you're changing your budget on a month-to-month basis. You also want to account for the flexibility of additional, I guess, upticks in income. So you can have a tax refund that's an uptick in income that's not fixed, not, the same as your regular paycheck that comes weekly or monthly or however. You can also have a month where you have an extra paycheck. You can win a lawsuit. So there's many different instances where you can have an additional set of income outside of your normal paycheck, but you need to include that in the budget process. So when you're writing out of your budget, just stretch it 12 months out, sometimes go 20 months, 24 months out, but make sure that you include the fixed and flexible portions of your income as well as your costs. So again, when I say costs, some of your costs may happen once a year. Some of your subscriptions you pay for once a year. Sometimes you may want to pay for them once a year. When you know you have your tax refund coming in once a year, what are you going to do with that additional influx of income? Where my Zoom, if I pay for it once a year, I get a month free. So I'm going to take those yearly influxes of income and offset that with a savings, because I'm going to pay for a subscription that I can pay for the full year and get a discount. So I'm saving money because I'm comparing the yearly amount of income to the yearly amount of costs. So you always want to be doing that. When you have a cost that happens once a month, you want to make sure that you offset that with the cost that happens once a month. Now, there's so many nuances when it comes to budgeting. I actually sometimes budget by the week, because sometimes when you're paid weekly, you may not earn enough for the week to pay for something that is a larger cost that you have for the month. So I may have to set aside a small portion or a portion of my weekly earned income to then have it set in a separate, so I actually may have multiple checking accounts. So you set that amount of money into that checking account, and that could be for household expenses. So that may cover your mortgage, your utility bills, your insurance, your renter's insurance, and things like that. So just make sure that you are accounting for your flexible costs, your flexible income, your fixed costs, your fixed income, because that is happening at all points in time throughout the budgeting process, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and on a yearly basis. Now, the next thing I stated here was a zero-based budget. So there's a flexible piece of your budget, there's a fixed piece of your budget, and then there's a zero-based piece of your budget. There's a piece of your budget that you say, it starts out no matter what at zero. It's going to stay at zero. I'm not going to spend anything on this particular category unless I can justify it. So you can say that I've really spent way too much money on nails per se, and I don't want to spend any more on nails until I pay off X, Y, and Z credit card. So you can say starting January 1 for that category, because it was a realistic category. When I evaluated all of my spending, I actually was spending, $1,200 for the year on nails. So now the nails category goes to zero. So now this budget is a zero-based budget. It starts out at zero. I have to justify why I'm spending any money in that category. And the reason why is because I'm just disciplining myself. The end goal is greater than that category. So that category is zero-based. It is zero until this other goal is accomplished. So the other goal could be paying off a credit card, which justifies no spending in that category. So all three of these things work together when you are preparing, when you're managing, when you're working on, when you're creating your budget. You kind of cannot do one without the other. You have flexible pieces, fixed pieces, and then you'll have a zero-based piece. Make sure that you have all three pieces working together. Okay, so now that we have a budget, we kind of want to have the best case scenario where we have some money left over. Like, okay, I got $10 left over. Well, what am I going to do with the $10? There's always a case where we see something. We go in a store and we see something and we want it, and it's several $100s. It can be several thousands of dollars. What do? Where, I could have it in my budget, but does it justify that I need to take such a large amount of, I think about the hours that it took to earn the income, the effort that it took to earn the income. And is it worth spending it in a purchase that happens in a matter of seconds? So I always am a proponent. I always support, I always push to save for large purchases. We want our income to be maximized. You have to make certain that you have enough income that it affords you the gift or the luxury of making a large purchase. So part of budgeting is saving for those big purchases. You may want to always have a pot that you're pouring into. You just purchased a home, for example, and you're going to want to refurnish it. You may see that there's a portion of your home, it needs repairs. You may want to start putting money into that bucket. There's so many different reasons where you have a large purchase coming up. So you want to start setting aside in your budget a category that is for a large purchase. You may not even have a name for it. It may not be called luxury sofa. It may not be called, I need to do some stucco work. It may just be called large purchase, gift for me, whatever. When I finish this MBA, I'm getting this, vacation, large purchase, and put that category in your budget. But just make it make sense for you to spend a lot of effort, so it can take you hours and hours and hours. It can take you 10 clients to earn the $10,000. Make sure that you are justifying why you're going to spend that money in one quick swoop. So I always am a proponent. I always support you saving for large purchases. With that comes the next slide, which is saving for an emergency or your nest egg. So, are we out of this pandemic? Who knows? But what it has taught us is that yesterday sometimes did not look like, today. Tomorrow does not look like today. And when that happens, does your financial picture, are you financially prepared? Does what you have in the bank account match? Does it, show that you are ready for an emergency? You don't want to say, no, I'm not ready for this emergency. Or if you do find that you're not ready for this emergency, are you telling yourself, I'm never going to have this happen again? What can I do different so this does not ever happen to me again? What lessons have I learned? And then what lessons can I teach my children as well so that they know how to prepare for an emergency? Preparing for an emergency should always be included in your budget. So, there's income, there's all your monthly costs, but there's also saving for big purchases. And now there's an emergency fund. There's a calculation behind your emergency fund, what actually should be included in your emergency fund. How do you even calculate that? What does it look like? Well, for me, your emergency fund should never be less than your household expenses times 6. If you lose your job, how will you pay your mortgage? How will you eat? How will you get back and forth to even look for a job? Will you have Wi-Fi to apply for a job? So you have to take care of your necessities. What will happen to your children? Will they go to school? How are they going to go to school? Will you pay the car note? So, an emergency fund does not happen overnight. It doesn't happen in 6 months because that means you're going to be earning at a negative every month. But you need to say, maybe it's 5% of my income and it takes me 5% times whatever to get the 6 months of income or 6 months of household necessities income. Then on top of that, you need to say, okay, I also spend realistically X, Y, and Z to maintain myself. Just because I have this emergency fund, does that mean we just sit in the house and go stale? Let's just be realistic and have a realistic plan. Maybe, after the 6 months of household necessities, I can include 1 vacation. And then on top of that, let's just stick as much else, however else I can put into this emergency fund. Maybe I want this plus 10,000. So just make it realistic, do a calculation. Don't just guess at it and say it's going to be 2,000. And, if that time ever comes, you'll see then that that was not a realistic expectation. It wasn't a good calculation. It didn't make sense. And it's definitely not affording me enough time to get myself back on my feet. So that's what your emergency fund, it's supposed to give you enough time to get back on your feet. Okay, so next we have, so how to track your progress, how to create a buffer using your resources, setting goals. This is all saying, okay, so after you do all of this work of budgeting, how do you track your progress? You need to, again, use those tools. I look at my bank account daily. I have alerts that tell me you've spent over $100. I have alerts that say you've had more than $1 deposited. Van, you have a question? You raised your hand, sir. Okay, I don't know if you can't unmute, but you can type it in the chat because I can't hear you. Okay, so tracking your progress, just use all of your tools. Make sure that you do not get like I'm not the best with words. Don't get scared of your money and what's happening with your money. Don't get scaredy pants and say, oh my God, I knew I went hard this weekend, and so I don't even want to look at what's going on in the bank account. I didn't get one of those little text messages that says your account was overdrawn, so I must be good. But just know that a lot of transactions don't happen on Sunday. So you can spend all you want on a Sunday, and then here comes Monday afternoon, and it's like, oh, there's these 6 items that just finally cleared. So swiping that card. And then also for budgeting and just for financial management, I have multiple checking accounts for different reasons. The money that I spend on the weekend is not the money that is for my mortgage or my utilities. And yes, I can have my work, I can have the direct deposit do all the work for me and say, okay, take this amount and go here and take this amount and go there. But I am just one of those people that I'm goal oriented, and I like to give myself like a mental pat on the back. I like to say, good job. I knew that it was $10 I needed over here, and I knew I needed 2,000 over there. I'd like to know that I took 500 out of each check to make sure that I was going to have the 2,000 in that account by the end of the month. And when I spent over here, I hate to say it, but if I overspent and had a negative balance, at least I knew my mortgage was safe. I knew that my car note was safe. I knew that my children were going to eat, and all my necessities were met. I didn't touch that account. So if you have to have a direct deposit do that for you, then great. But if you can do it yourself and give yourself the pat on the back, and if you can be disciplined, then do it. If you slip once, if you slip twice, then just be realistic and say, okay, maybe that's not my strong suit, and let your direct deposit do the work for you. But that is also part of the budgeting process, is to track your progress. If you make a mistake once or twice, then put a tool in place. But tracking your progress is what's going to lead you to knowing how well you're doing with the budget. Do not be scared of the budget. Don't go hard one weekend and think the fix is to just not look at the account. Go look at the account so you don't do the same again, or just so you can say, maybe I might need another hustle. Maybe I need another way of making income. Maybe this is the lifestyle that I prefer. Maybe that's where I want to be. Maybe I want to be at the 10K per month or per week mark. Maybe this 1K per week is just not it for me. But you won't know that if you're running scared away from I don't even want to look at the bank app. I can't even look at that today. So never do that. Also, create a buffer. That's what I was saying about your emergency fund. It can be 6 months of necessities plus this amount. Always put that buffer in there, because again, we were in a pandemic, and at one point in time, we may have been forced out of work, forced to be, laid off a little bit longer than we wanted. And then again, what if, we always have things that come up that we may not plan for. We can have a loved one pass away, and we may have to help out. And I don't say this because I like saying it, but sometimes we do not plan well for death, and then we have to help out. But if you have the buffer, then that's at least some ease there. We may have a birthday and want to go hard. We have the funds to do so. We know we have a place or plan in place to replace it, but have a buffer, because it's better to pull from something than from nothing. So just always just know that you'll get out of things what you put into it. So just make sure you include a buffer also. So using your resources. So you have networks, you have people that you know, and some work well and some work better at things that you may not work so well at. They can be a resource for you. So I prepared the budget for my daughter as just an example, but I would not have done so per se had she not said, okay, I need help in this area. You know, I could have been just like, oh, she kind of gets it through osmosis. You know, I'm her parent. She's got to be good at this. She's got to be good at, you know, finances. And it's kind of crazy because honestly, both of her parents have accounting firms. So you would think, okay, she's got to be good at money. But she, you know, raised her hand and said, okay, I need help in this area. So a resource can be another person. You know, it can be an accountability partner that says, okay, you know, if we stay on track with our budget, we can have this, you know, party, or we can have this present at the end of the goal. So we're going to hold each other accountable. Okay, what is the goal? Okay, the goal is to stay on track of our budget, plus get at least 2 of those 6 months saved. And you make that pact with a person, and you have an accountability partner, and you have dates, and you have, and I don't mean just like, you know, you just have words, but you have a schedule. You have amounts listed out. You have amounts per month. You have a call in per month. So I'm also a realtor. And so when we were talking about an accountability partner, part of having an accountability partner was having actually goals listed out, like written out, like not just saying we're going to chat about something, but what are you going to chat about? Be strategic with it. Have an amount listed out. Have a time, have a place. Okay, we're going to meet this place. We're not going to just be on the couch, because then that can just turn into just sitting on the couch and talking about other things. We're going to be strategic. We're going to meet the goal. We're not going to deviate from that. I'm going to hold you accountable. You will hold me accountable. And then using resources. There's just so many apps. I didn't even want to list out apps because there's just way too many. And many, many years ago, I was using Mint and all these other kind of crazy apps, but there's just so many apps. Right now, I use Excel, I use a notebook, and that works for me. But use whatever apps works for you. Set those goals, and I mean a number, not, I just want to be wealthy, or I just want to stick to my budget. Well, what does that mean? You know, I want to have a budget where I at least go and have 10% going to savings. I have 5% going to my, you know, emergency fund. If you don't list it out with numbers, hardcore numbers, and it's just a dream, is dreaming, and it's figurative, then it's going to be more difficult for you to achieve that goal. Setting a goal actually means calculating it, writing it down, having a figure in mind, writing it down, sticking to it, or else it's, you know, it's just like I said, it's, you don't go to Siri and say, I think I want to get a sandwich. You know, she's going to say, well, where do you want me to take you? Where do you want to go? Where's your goal? What are we doing along this journey? And for, you know, if you think about it, like I'm actually talking to Siri, and artificial intelligence, she's not dreaming. She needs facts. She needs data. So you feed your budget data when you are setting your goal. Be realistic, be solid about it. Okay, so the next slide, I kind of like this slide because this is where I was talking about you're doing all this budgeting, and you're constantly going above, way beyond your budget. So what do? Do you sit in the corner and cry? You know, there's this TikTok about, so what do you do when you get up in the morning? You just want to, you know, you got to still move forward. You still got to push through. Where I'm kind of mastering and learning to have multiple streams of income. Like I didn't like this level of income. I just didn't like it. You know, I might be in this or that, I don't know, but I just didn't like that level of income. So what did I do? I had to earn more income. So I have no free time. So that's, you know, I had to trade something, but I had to out earn my spending. If you never out earn your spending, that's a cycle of insanity. So somehow I just believe that we're given gifts, we're given a certain level of intelligence. So a lot of times you can earn income with your gifts, and then you can use your intelligence to learn new skills, and you can market those and you can earn income with those as well. So your side hustles, the way you earn extra income, you're kind of bridging some of both of those, where you're bridging your gifts and new skills to kind of out earn, or just always be in the process of out earning your spending. If you don't, your budget will just always look like it's in the red, it's in the negative. You're just not out earning where you're spending. So the goal is to, if you have one job and it's not getting it done, try to find another way organically where you can earn additional income. You can have a Shopify store. If you do hair and nails well, you can do that. You can have a tax business without having a license or a little bit of training. Some people cook fairly well. They have businesses doing that. And they can even record themselves and have a cooking show. Right now, the world has become such a small place. You can reach any and everyone from your phone, from your laptop, from your computer. Just get out there. If you find that you are not earning enough, be realistic. First, be realistic. Again, don't be scared to check where you're spending and how you're spending. If you are not earning enough, just have a talk with yourself, have a come to Jesus meeting, and just say, hey, I've got to really investigate and to really put effort into earning another set of income. So this is just my little slide of, I don't know, I'm not quite a serial entrepreneur, but I'm getting there. But I just think that it's important because I've noticed that this is the way the world is leaning. Everyone is growing to be the ultimate in a TikToker or have a Shopify store. I've got this, I got that, I got this. I'm a coach this, I got a course there. And you cannot believe, my husband was telling me there's this girl who said, this little girl was on Maury or Dr. Phil's like Catch Me Outside. If y'all remember that little girl, she just bought a $6 million house because she has a fans only on the TikTok or whatever you call the thing. As y'all can see, I'm a little old on the TikTok. And I'm just like, yeah, her little house, hustle, side hustle, whatever you want to call it. She found a way to profit off of this little catchphrase. So again, use your talent, use your skills, use your intelligence, try to out earn where you're spending. Always try to out earn where you're spending. Make that a piece of budgeting. So another thing I talk about is how to pay off your debt. There are many different methods. I try to keep it simple with this method, which is called the snowball method, which is I have 10 credit cards. They all have a minimum payment. I do just despise paying the minimum payment. I despise it. And the reason why I despise paying the minimum payment is because there's such a thing called the interest rate. And a lot of people go, and then here's the minimum payment. And your minimum payment can be $70. And then the interest rate or the interest payment or your interest cost of using their money hits you. And then you get charged with $29. And then you see your balance has only decreased by 30 whatever dollars. And you're just like, oh, okay, that wasn't nice. You just think like that just wasn't a nice thing to do to me. What is this interest rate stuff? So the object is to pay off that balance as soon as possible. So you pay the minimum balance because, you don't want to have yourself where you're not as liquid as you should be. So paying the minimum balance is kind of where you should begin. And you put a little bit extra, making certain that at least on the one particular card you start with, and I like to start with the card that has the highest interest rate. So I attack that card like it's like the red-headed stepchild that I don't like. I don't even like this child. I don't even like this card. I'm paying this card off. It has a high interest rate. So I pay this card with this additional payment, this extra money. I'm throwing everything that I can at this money. And that's because it costs me to use this money. So I pay this card down quickly. And I use the minimum monthly payment. So if that was the $70, now I take that and I put it on card number 2. So card number 2, whatever its minimum monthly payment is, I do that plus the minimum monthly payment of the card I just paid off. And that is the essence of the snowball method. And that will have you paying off your credit cards quicker than not using the method. If you just go $10 here and $10 there and $20 there, and I get tax return and I do this, and I don't know why, and I've done all the calculations, but that just kind of does not work. And it's because we're not considering the interest rates and the differences in this interest rate can be 29.99, that one can be 10.99. You think I put a lot of money down here, but you actually should have put it into the card that had the higher interest rate. So use the snowball method, but then also consider the interest rate, the amount that they are charging you for using, in essence, their money. So make sure you consider that also a little bit in the calculation of the snowball method. So getting to our last slide, which is budget maintenance, is similar to a slide that I spoke about, which is just kind of, the progress and tracking and maintaining your budget. So now that you're progressing and you're going through your budget process month after month, you're seeing what's flexible, what's fixed, what's zero-based, you're paying off your debt. Budget maintenance is just sticking to all of these things, using your tools, finding an accountability partner. You have to do all these things because you don't put in the work, you may not get to the goal. It may just be a strenuous process and you'll just feel like, oh my God, I just may as well just spend and it just falls wherever it falls. If you stick with your budget, you will see success. You will reach your goals. It can feel as if I'm always in this box of being disciplined. And that is not the case. You are the disciplinarian. And you have to make certain that you feel that you are in charge. I'm not being disciplined. I am the disciplinarian. I am empowered to say my money goes here and not there. I am the decision maker. And that's what budgeting is. It is controlling where your money is going. You earned it. You spend it how you want. We feel like we just kind of go on a weekend and don't know where it went. When you have to take accountability and say, I spent it how I wanted to, but now I want to spend it in a different manner. I want to be strategic with my spending. I want to be strategic and accomplish these goals with my money. So budget maintenance is just you really keeping that goal in front of you. And if you have to look at it daily, look at it daily, but never any less than monthly. And I kind of would suggest to look at your budget weekly. but keep your goal in front of you and push, push, push. Become the disciplinarian, be in control of your budget, and you will see success and you will achieve those goals. And that is all that I have. Any questions? Any questions?
Alicia, so you have your hand raised.
Hi, yes, I have a question about when you said to pay the card with the highest interest rate first using the snowball method. So I follow Dave Ramsey. I'm not sure if you're aware of him. Have you
Yes,
heard of
I
him,
am.
Dave Ramsey, and his snowball method? Now he says that you should pay like the lowest. I mean, like, okay, you have your cards listed with the highest balance first. And he said, it doesn't matter about the interest rate. You should start working on the lowest balance first to help speed up the process of the snowball method. So I was just wondering, like, what was your thoughts on that opposed to paying the highest card first?
I read that exact article. I went to his page. I was very early on in my growth and budgeting and all that. And I remember exactly when he said that. And I believe there's a portion that says, this is so that you can get a feeling for accomplishment. So when you pay off that one with the smaller balance, you pay it off quickly. And then it's like, oh, wow, okay, I did something. Let's keep this going. Where mathematically it is the one with the largest interest rate that is costing you the most to use the money. So you want to use the method towards, in that manner first. I always suggest paying off the one with the highest interest rate.
I want to interject. So with paying the highest interest rate first, that's the avalanche method. That's going to be different from the snowball method. And you can do a combination of the two, whichever you're more comfortable with, because you also want to take into effect your budget. Whatever you have budgeted, that's what you want to use towards paying down your debt. You don't want to pay off your debt if you don't have any excess income. So you don't want to overexalt yourself trying to paying down this debt, doing anything that's over what you already have. So I think that's a big misconception with a lot of people. They stress about paying off debt too soon before they're able to set that budget, before they're able to have that emergency fund. Because yes, debt is important. You do want to pay it off. However, if you don't have that emergency fund and Lord forbid, you do lose your job or something happens to where you don't have any income, then that's going to matter more than the fact of you paying down your debt. So yes, there's the snowball method as well as the avalanche method. And when it comes to how to pay off debt and like those different methods when it comes to budgeting.
Yeah, I would agree. But I just think that's my preference. And I know which one actually costs you more. So you just have to, again, like you're definitely correct, avalanche versus the snowball. But I just think that I don't like having the fee to use someone else's money, and that the fee at the interest rate of 29.9% versus 17, whatever, however, you're just losing money. It's just money you are losing. And I just always focus on paying. That's just my preference. I focus on paying those off.
Yeah, of course. I just think with Alicia, I think she was confused because the snowball method was mentioned. And so I was just wanting to let her know that it was both methods that's available. And so that's the method you spoke on with the higher one. That's the avalanche method where it's a little bit more aggressive. And like you said, it's going to cost you the less in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So did you have anything else to add to that, Monica? If not, just to save on time, we can move on to the later part of the presentation.
Oh yeah, we can move on. I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, and if you do have a question, you can definitely raise your hand towards the end of the workshop where we will open it to the audience for more questions. So thank you all for your patience, for sticking in with us, for learning all of these great tools in regards to credit and budgeting and all of that. Now we're going to move on to how you can protect your identity. So once you Establish and maintain your credit. Once you've built your budget, you want to protect all of the hard work you've done, because at any point where something comes along to where someone steals your identity, all of that progress you made goes out the window. So what is identity theft? It is when someone uses your personal information without your permission. And your personal information consists of your name, age, address, phone number, social security number, bank account numbers, and et cetera. It's something that is specialized and unique for you, just like your fingerprint. Your identity can get stolen several different ways. It can get stolen online by email, not actively checking the mail, browsing corrupted sites. If you're not actively checking the mail, if you're browsing corporate sites, any scammer, someone that's reaching out to you and they're trying to get your information, saying that they're Apple, saying that there's someone that you do business with, but they're not in fact that actual person that works with the company. If you're shopping with compromised companies, if you discard your documents unsecurely, and also from like medical or business offices that hold your personal information. Sometimes the people that work in the office, they can be behind it, or someone can hack their system and they'll have access to all of your personal information. Think about it when you go to the doctor, you give them literally everything, your birthday, your social security number, even your medical history, just different things that someone can use, as well as like your parent information. These are different things that someone can compile and trace on you that they can use against you later to come. What happens when your identity is stolen? New accounts are opened in your name, criminal activity is done in your name, which negatively impacts your credit score. Because once someone opens an account in your name, let's say a fake credit card, once that account is not open, you now have an additional credit card account listed to your credit report, which, as was stated in the beginning of the presentation, that does impact your credit score because one, you have a hard inquiry. Hard inquiries are not good. Two, now your credit amount or credit utilization will increase depending on what they were approved for. Let's say they're approved for $5,000. They use all of that $5,000 because it does nothing to them. All they wanted was your money. So now you have your credit utilization at 100%. That's going to bring your credit score down so much. So you want to make sure that you're staying on top of these things to where when a new account is open or you see an inquiry, you're able to take action and you're able to stop this in its tracks. So again, if your identity is stolen, you want to act fast. So for me personally, I'll share a story. Just this past fall, I was a victim of identity theft. It was done through mail fraud to where they were breaking into mailboxes and they were taking mail and somehow just compiled all the information from the mail and was able to get my name, my address, of course, my social security number, my email address, I think, but they didn't have other information as far as like phone number, mother's maiden name or anything like that. But they were able to open a credit card account. And they opened several actually. So I guess that's a good thing, you know, have some good credit to where I can have multiple credit card accounts open, but that's not something I want, especially when it's not for me. But in this case, what I was able actually to do is I had an alert from my credit report saying like, hey, you had an inquiry. Me, I'm just like, no, that hasn't happened. I don't know what this is. So I check into it because I'm just thinking it's a mistake. I never thought it was that my identity was stolen, not once. Even when they asked, when I called the company and they're like, well, it's probably identity theft. You need to check into this. I'm like, no, you're wrong. It's not that. And lo and behold, it actually was that. So what I did is I placed a fraud alert. I ordered my credit reports. I reviewed everything. I said what was mine, what was not. And then I canceled those accounts before the perpetrators could come back, get those same credit cards and use them. And then I submitted an identity theft report. You can also submit a police report. I actually did that because any mail crime, that's a federal crime. However, it's what the officer told me when I did go submit an identity theft report is that those cases are like, they're so common. It's basically like trying to, I don't know, he said something about like sand at the beach, like it's everywhere. It wasn't comforting in that moment. I definitely admit that. I was just like, so you're not gonna do anything. And pretty much that's kind of what the feeling is, what I got from that. So it's like you have to take the onus on yourself. So just by doing these certain things, just to kind of be on top of it, you'll catch them before they're able to negatively impact your credit score. And then you also just want to make sure that you freeze your credit and bank account so they're not able to do anything further. I went as far as like checking the Social Security database or just anything I could think of. I Googled everything. I'm like, okay, what can I do? Because I don't want them to have my information and to do any further damage, even though they didn't do any damage, but anything that they could do. Because the possibilities are endless. You know, everything we do online, you don't have to go in person. You don't have to submit your identification. You don't have to really do any background check when you open these new accounts, which it's convenient when you're actually, when it's you, when you're actually doing it and you want a quick turnaround. However, when it's not you and it's someone, again, that's trying to steal your identity or just, you know, come up on some money or whatever the case may be, it's an uncomfortable feeling that they are able to just do this anytime to a lot of people, and et cetera. So again, you want to act fast whenever your identity is stolen, and just be alert prior to it even happening. So that'll go into how you can prevent identity theft. You want to monitor your credit and bank statements. Check your mail often. That's how they got me. I am a habitual person for leaving mail in there because it's nothing important. Everything is electronic. So if it's paper mail, I'm not really too worried about it. And I also have the scans from USPS. So I see what's coming in before I even check the mail. And I'm like, oh, that's not important. It's just a, you know, just a promotional ad, or it's a deal that I already seen, you know, electronically during the email, like I said. So mail, it was something that I definitely didn't consider something serious, but I definitely learned my mistake from that. And then also you want to not reply to unsecured emails. Any email that says, like, again, like Apple, or it could be a service that you use. It could be your phone provider or just anybody you do business with. The email, it'll look different from an official email. You can kind of spot those out. However, again, if they're asking for any information and just anything that they typically wouldn't ask or something that you don't feel comfortable with sharing, don't. Anytime it just seems too personal, it's okay for you to say you don't want it, just don't respond or just look further into it. As well as get your annual credit reports and sign up for alerts. Something I did, something that I definitely want to encourage everyone to do. Shop on secure websites. You can use third-party websites like PayPal, or just something to where you're not actually typing in your credit or debit card or account numbers, because scammers, they can track your keystrokes, and that's how they'll have your information without ever seeing your debit card, without ever being in a proximity to knowing what your card number, what your account number could be. And then you want to also store important documents in safe places. If you have a safe, if you have a lockbox, if you have a safe deposit box at the bank, those are pretty good places where they're secured and it's not easily reachable. Shred sensitive paperwork. Use difficult passwords, the same password you've been using on all 20 accounts, all 20 years of your life or whatnot. That's just hello 123. You want to add some complexity to these passwords, so it's not easy to detect based off your information. It's your first name plus your birthday. That's something that everyone kind of think of. And when you're talking about scammers, these people are trained to scam. These people are trained to be, you know, shisty and sneaky and con certain information and put it together to come up with the result that they want. So make them as difficult as possible, and then read your bills carefully. Did you make that payment? Is this something that you actually did? If it's an NSF fee, is that something? Was this a payment that you actually made, or was it something that was done outside of you knowing? You just want to make sure that you're looking into everything that comes across in regards to your accounts. And then the different credit report, they have company fraud lines. So as far as like the three credit bureaus, so Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, they all have a 1-800 number that you can call if you do experience fraud. I also encourage you to most of the times when you call them, they'll also encourage you to contact the actual company that the fraud is done through. Like in my case, I think it was like Citibank or in another bank I can't think of right now. So outside of me calling just these fraud lines, I also had to call these companies directly that the accounts were open through to say this is what happened, and to where they can take care of it on their end as well, because they're aware of the fraudulent things that happens whenever people are opening these accounts online. So they do have their own fraudulent department in the company. So you do want to make sure you just do all due diligence and reach out to every company that's involved in any other fraudulent accounts. And then whenever you're reporting the identity theft, you submit the claim to the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission. You do that at the 1-800 number, or you can go online to ftc.gov/COMP for the complaint. Any questions in regards to identity theft? Again, it's one of those things that's really overlooked. It's not talked about as much. You feel invincible. You don't think it's going to happen to you. I personally was one of those people. And when it happens, you're kind of just caught off guard. You may not be lucky into the case of, you catch it before it happens. It may be something to where it's your disposable income, which directly from the bank that you use from your income. With the credit, it's something that it affects you, but at the same time, it's not your funds. So it's not your hard-earned money. So, you have different cases and you just have different situations that come with it. But as long as you do your due diligence, you stay on top of your credit report, actively checking it, and you can do it to where you get like alerts. I know I get alerts through my Discover credit card, as well as just any type of activity changes. I also get that directly through the different credit bureaus. So you can do it without doing one of the checking of credit reports that causes like, I think you only get like a few a year. So you can do it without having to go into like doing your usage of how many reports you can actually review. So I know I see some people speaking to their experience with it, and yeah, you definitely just want to make sure you're on top of it. I know Ms. Faith has mentioned to her before that she has experienced it as well. And they'll get a call, they'll want to verify your transaction. That's kind of a typical way whenever you're doing any type of like banking, and it's just a transaction that's normally outside of your normal activity. They want to check on it, see what's the problem, see if it's something that you've done, and things like that. So I'll go ahead and wrap up the identity theft, and we'll move on to saving versus investing. So whenever you're saving, this is going to be after you have established your credit, you have built your budget. Again, you want to make sure you're protecting everything, that all of the hard work that you've done so far, and you have a surplus. So when you budget for your emergency fund, that is going to be 6 times your monthly expenses, as Monica has stated. So once you have anything additional over that, you want to save. And when you're saving, this is going to be something that's going to go towards a goal. It could be a vacation, a wedding, new car, tuition, just anything you want to save for. It could be that luxury couch, just something that's going to be outside of your expenses and outside of that emergency fund. That's going to be your savings that you're going to build. And then investing, that is when you're wanting to grow your money using compound interest. You're wanting to use the average return in the market to grow what you put in for retirement. When you come to retirement age, whatever age you set that for yourself, because you could retire early, or you can retire at the typical age of like 65. And you could also use investing for passive income. So if you want to use it for wealth building purposes, whenever you're considering investing, it's going to be based off what your goals are, again, for retirement, and if you want to do for any wealth building purposes, to where you put that dollar in, and by the time 10 years from now, that dollar has increased to an amount that surpasses what the dollar was that you put in. Because if you just put that into a banking account, the dollar that you put in now is not going to be the same dollar that you pull out 10 years from now. But when you put that into an investment account and you actually are investing actively, and you have invested in some type of investment vehicle, then it will grow, and it should grow in a positive way to where it's going to be more. However, there is risk associated, so it could be to where you do lose some, but you never want to break even to where you lose less than what you have, or you end up after you get the same dollar out. So again, whenever you're thinking about savings, a savings account only allows you to earn less than 1% in interest on your balance a year compared to the average return in the stock market, which is about 10%. And how you do want to keep in mind that when investing, there is more risk because the cash is generated by you investing in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, as well as exchange traded funds and real estate also. So the value will grow beyond the initial value. So again, you're putting that dollar in and it grows exponentially. Your investment goals can vary based on your age, income, and risk tolerance. So if you're young and you're just starting or finishing college, you're going to have a higher risk tolerance because you're young. Retirement is a while away compared to if you're middle-aged and you're starting a family. At this age and you're starting a family, you're thinking about childcare. You're thinking about when this child goes to college and you want to pay for that tuition or whatever avenue that they consider as far as a career that may be the unconventional route of just going to school. However you want to fund the child's growth and their trajectory as far as life, you want to fund that yourself. You're gonna have a medium risk tolerance because you still have some time till you retire. However, you have some other responsibilities and that you want to consider as well. And then if you're at the retirement age, you have a very low risk tolerance because you're already at retirement. You don't want to lose out on your fixed income. You don't want to lose out on the money that you have already saved up or you already have. And so you want to make sure you don't jeopardize that because again, investing does have risk. It's not absolute. There is a chance that you may lose money. There's a chance that you may grow money. It's still a risk at the end of the day compared to if you did put your money under the mattress or if you put it aside somewhere or in the house, or if you did have it into your bank account. Because most of the times with the bank account, it's federally insured, so you don't really have much risk outside of the surplus amount that they have set, depending on the type of account. So whenever you're thinking about the different retirement accounts, it's going to be out of these that are listed. So you have a 401k, which is an employer-sponsored plan. It allows for contributions to be made directly by employees, and it can be matched by the employer if they have this as a benefits plan. A traditional IRA is an investment account that allows for individuals to make tax advantage contributions and earnings to grow tax deferred until it's withdrawn. So this is different compared to a non-retirement account because you are going to be taxed on your actual earnings that you have whenever you realize any of your positions. And I'll kind of go into that a little bit later. But with the traditional IRA, it also provides more investment choices than your standard 401k. Because with the 401k, they usually have the retirement fund that's targeted towards the typical year that you're supposed to retire. So for me personally, it's like 2060. And so it's going to put you into funds and different stocks that are a little bit more aggressive based on that target fund year because it's so far out. This is 2022, so 2060 is a little bit more time. So I'm going to be in a more riskier pool. But as you know, the years get smaller and smaller and shorter, then it will change that fund as far as like what's actually in the fund. And this is specifically for 401ks. So the traditional IRA differs because you are able to have a little bit of more flexibility as far as what you choose. And then regarding the contribution limits, with a traditional IRA, it's $6,000 if you are 50, if you are under the age of 50, and it's $7,000 if you are over the age of 50, and this is a year. So you have a contribution limit of $6,000 or $7,000 a year. Any distributions from these accounts have a 10% penalty if taken before age 59 and a half, unless it's a qualified exception. A qualified exception usually is determined by medical expenses, you're buying your first house, just something along those lines to where they say, okay, this is something that you can use this money for. And it's usually descriptive of what you can make a distribution for that's qualified. A Roth IRA is similar to a traditional account. However, it is funded with after-tax contributions. So gains are tax-free because it is going to be something that you already been taxed on. So it's going to be your net pay. It's going to be your net pay earnings instead of the gross pay. Gross is not including tax, and then your net pay is including tax. So if you take your net pay earnings, you put that into a Roth IRA, you're not going to be taxed on that again. And this is also going to be based on earned income. If you do not make any earned income, you cannot open a Roth IRA. And if you have a gross income, so gross is before taxes, of at least $140,000, you will not be able to open it because it does have a cap as far as the salary amount of how much you can earn in regards to having this type of account. There are different like backdoor contribution ways that you can do it that most wealthier people do. But again, that would be something you would want to confer with like your tax consultant or something along those lines. And then a simple and SEP IRA, these are similar to the traditional accounts as well, but these are for self-employed and small businesses. So it gives them the opportunity to set up and a ways for retirement accounts as well, even if they're not with a Fortune 500 company or something along those lines. And then I'll move on to the brokerage account. So there are several brokerage accounts, and these are going to be different from the retirement accounts. So you have the individual or joint. You can be on the account by yourself. You can be on it with your spouse, your kids, a friend, whoever. It's just kind of like a banking account. This is an investment account that allows investors to deposit funds to place trades in the financial market. So you put money in. With the money that you put in, you can technically shop in the stock market. And so you can also have self-service versus managed. There are different types of accounts that you can have based on the brokerage that you use. And then in regards to kind of what I mentioned earlier, any money earned on the asset in the account is taxable if it's realized. And realized means that you have sold out of your position. So if you bought Apple at $20 and it rises to 100, if you sell the position, it's an $80 gain that you receive because you put in 20, but it grew to 100. So the $80 difference is what you earned. And that is the amount that's going to be taxed. And then it's also going to be reported for tax purposes. Usually the brokerage will send you out information for that. And so you can have that whenever it's time to report your taxes. The UGMA, which is the Uniform Gift to Minors, it's an investment account that allows for minors to hold assets up to 18 with a custodian to manage it. And then the Coverdell Education Savings is an investment account for educational purposes for minors from grades K through 12. This does have a contribution limit of $2,000 a year. So just like banking account, it does allow for minors to have accounts as well. And again, it does have to be in charge by a custodian, a guardian, someone that can oversee those accounts. And this is another way that you can grow money for your child if it's for educational purposes outside of just the typical savings account or something like that. With the different asset classes, this is what you're going to use your funds for when you are shopping in the stock market. You're going to have the stocks, which is owning a share of the company. This allows for capital appreciation because you're going to earn more than the initial deposit. It's usually the method of buying low and selling high. So again, you bought Apple at 20 and the price rises up to 100. You bought low at 20 and you sold when it got to 100 because it was higher than what you put in. And so that way you had a capital appreciation of the $80 that you gained. Stocks typically give you more momentum in growing your investment, but it does come with more risk compared to bonds, which they are actually lending money to companies and they pay income to the holders on a periodic basis. This gives you a slow and steady pace of growth with less risk compared to stocks, because again, stocks is going with the market. And so it's going to fluctuate a little bit more than a bond will. Bond is pretty steady. It's just a debt instrument that company uses. And this is a way that they can get money back. So in regards to stocks and bonds, a person that is retired, they're going to lean more towards bonds because it's more fixed income, as well as someone that is younger, they would lean more towards stocks because it does have a little bit more risk and they are able to accept that risk, again, based on their financial journey and where they are as far as income level. But they do just have more, like they're able to do that a little bit more than someone that's retired because they do have the flexibility as far as years go. If you want to determine how much you should go towards your stocks or bonds, you can use the rule of 110, where it is basically you subtract your age from 110 and use the larger number towards your stock percentage and the rest is towards your bond percentage. But you also have different investment vehicles that you can use. You can do mutual funds, which are a pool of assets that are managed by investment groups. This only trades once a day at the close of market. So it's not the same that you're going to see the difference in prices throughout the day like you would with a stock. The stock, as long as the market is open, it's going to move. And you also have some that move pre-market or after market. But with a mutual fund, you only see one price. And you most likely throughout the day, you're going to see the previous day net asset value that it closed at. And then when the actual market closed that day, you'll see the new asset value based on that mutual fund. So normally when you're trading a mutual fund, you put in dollars. You put in a dollar amount of what you want from that fund. And then the exchange traded funds is kind of a combination between the mutual funds and the stock, because it's a basket of securities that trade on the exchange, similar to an individual stock, but it has lower fees than a mutual fund does have. And these actually trade throughout the day. So it's different from the mutual fund that only shows that trade at the end of the day at the close of market. The exchange traded fund, again, it's going to move like the stock does. It's going to fluctuate. It's going to go up and down, or just up or just down throughout this actual market day. And it does give you that flexibility, because if you're into tech, if you're into any medical grade companies, if you're into retail, whatever you're into, you can use a actual index fund that has a basket of those securities, to where you don't just have to buy only one of the company. So you can have, you're not putting all of your eggs into one basket. You're actually just kind of being able to spread it out using the exchange traded funds. And a lot of experts kind of do gear, they kind of recommend these towards like intermediate traders or beginning traders, because you don't really have to do too much to get the kind of same benefit that you would from an individual stock. But you just want to do your own research when it comes to that as well, to determine that it fits your needs. And then lastly, I would just discuss the different type of brokerages that you can use whenever you want to open an account. So you have an online broker. It allows you to open a self-directed account with the requirements and fees. They offer the same retirement accounts. They won't offer a 401k because that is only an employer-based account. But however, the traditional IRAs and all of the other IRAs, as well as the those savings accounts and the minor custodian accounts, and as well as like the individual and those different types of accounts you can open with an online broker, as well as a robo advisor, which is a service that assists with managing the account for you. And they're going to choose the risk appropriate investments based off like a survey or just some more information that they receive from you to determine if this is the best fit based on your financial journey, what type of risk you're able to receive and be exposed to, your income level, your age, of course, how far you are from retirement. They're going to consider all of those things. You could also go to someone that is a actual financial advisor that can actually manage the funds for you. And they'll kind of do the same thing as well, to where they're going to assess your risk. They're going to also use, your age and things like that to determine what would best fit your needs based off what your current financial situation is and where you want to go as far as your investment goes. So this is the end of the Investing Your Futures section. I do just kind of want to reiterate that the method and the way that we outlined this is for a reason, because you want to make sure that you take care of the things that you can do easily and that they're like quickly accessible, that doesn't take too much hard work, that you can take, you can start tomorrow. So whenever you're thinking about, building your credit or establishing and maintaining a good credit score, budget, that's very important. You want to make sure that you establish your budget, that you have that emergency fund, because the pandemic showed us that an emergency fund is necessary, because you never know what can happen, and that you want to just think of different ways to increase your income if your expenses are too much, and also how to decrease your expenses if you don't have enough income to cover them. And then again, you want to protect what you have done so far. You don't want someone to come in and take away all of the hard work you've done, to where they're bringing down your credit score. So now you have to pay more in certain different, bills, certain different deposits, and that's going to impact your budget. And so you want to make sure you have those things established, and you want to make sure that once that is done, and you have the flexibility of a surplus income to start, saving and investing, you want to make sure that you are doing it to where you're not going to look at those funds. You're not going to look at those funds for the next 5 years. It's not something that you need. And, in your everyday life, you don't want to look at it. You don't want to have the mindset of I need it, because if you have that mindset, you do not need to invest yet, or you need to take the time to do a little bit more research. Make sure you take care of the fundamentals first. Make sure you take care of your money mindset first before you go into investing, where it is more risky, where it's not the same. You're pulling in the same dollar and getting that same dollar out. So you just want to take into all of those considerations, as well as inflation. Inflation is a big thing. You can you can kind of judge what inflation is doing based on different countries and their currency, and kind of compare what the US dollar is compared to another country's dollar. And that will determine the inflation, the different things you can look to as far as the economy, to just kind of gauge what you should do and what you should be gearing towards as far as your goals for the future. Again, everything doesn't have to be done the next day. Don't be intimidated by it. When it comes to financial literacy, especially within the Black community, it's just taboo to talk about. It's something that scares us, and it shouldn't. Everyone needs it. The economy is there for a reason, and all it takes is for you to be educated on it, just taking the proper steps to gain a better understanding, looking for different resources, having different accountability partners, and just setting the standard that will take care of you today, as well as 10 years from now, as well as 100 years from now, because we're all about building the generational wealth and also giving back to your community. So again, I do want to thank everyone for being on with us, just staying on. If you have any questions, just go ahead and raise your virtual hand. We can all just tag team this, whoever wants to answer. But again, we do thank you for being on with us, and we'll answer any questions, and then we'll move on to telling you what our upcoming events are.
Are there any questions from the group right now? No, everybody's good? Okay. So it makes me feel like they did a good job of presenting. So I'm gonna stop sharing very quickly because we're gonna take a group picture. We always like to make sure we document what we're doing. So we are going to take a picture. So if you either have your camera on, or if you got a little cute picture, that's perfectly fine as well. So if you let me know when you're ready to take that picture, and we will get ready.
Okay, anytime.
All right, so on the count of 3, we'll do one, then we'll just say cheese, and on the next one we'll say money, because money makes people smile. We want to make sure we're getting some money, okay? So 1, 2, 3. All right, next one. Money on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Money.
Good.
Okay, thank you, Sorority. I'm going to go ahead and pull our screen back up to talk about some of our upcoming events. So Brianna, if you could drop the survey in the chat box, that would be great. So if you stay in tune with what we have going on, we do have a Facebook page, Instagram. We also have a website. We do have 2 events that are coming up on the horizon. We have one that is scheduled for tomorrow on Friday, April the 29th. It is virtual. It will start at 6:08 and end at 7:38. It is a masquerade ball, so you can bring and decorate a nice mask. We will be celebrating our history within the community, as well as recognizing different members within the community who have made an impact in regards to our different targets. On Friday, May the 6th, which is next week, we will be having a Mother's Legacy celebration, Pearls of Wisdom for Mom. This does not necessarily have to be, your kid, if you're an aunt, if you serve as a mother figure. This is something that you can attend specifically with that special person. The tickets are $25. There will be raffles, giveaways, and a souvenir gift. So if you're interested in attending, definitely check out our website, our Facebook, Instagram, the link that you can actually pay for your ticket to secure your spot will be listed. My soror Brianna has listed the survey link within the chat. Please take that survey, as it does give us feedback on what we're doing, if there's any room for improvement, and also the impact that we're making specifically through these programs. I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. I know we were on a little bit longer than what we originally attended, but hopefully you all were able to gain some very insightful tips, education, and resources to really help you see specifically your financial, your future. I always say it's important that you can make the change for tomorrow with just making those choices and those decisions, and even those sacrifices. Don't allow the bad habits from either your parents' history or things that have occurred deter you from making better decisions in the future. You can do it. You just may need an accountability partner. You may need someone that can assist you throughout the process. So we want to thank you all for joining us this evening. We look forward to having you come to other future events that we have. I want to encourage everybody to take hold of your financial freedom. Okay. You can do whatever you choose to do as long as you have some discipline and put the effort forth. If you need accountability partner, text somebody, say, hey, girl, I need you to be my accountability partner. I'm trying to save money to go on a trip or to buy whatever you may want to buy. Okay. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you all for attending.